for the first 3 quarters of that football game. I watched it right there, and even my girl, who's the biggest Brock Purdy fan ever, oh, my God, Brock Purdy doesn't – oh, man, this is not good. But you know what? That's fine. The Niners advanced. They survived and advanced. But let me say this as we open up the phone lines, 888-957-9570. There's one thing that kind of bugged me about everything going on with Brock Purdy is I kept hearing it was raining. The ball was wet. It was raining. The weather wasn't right. He had to fight through the elements. We don't give that excuse to Lamar Jackson. We sure the hell didn't do it to Trey Lance in Chicago. We never did it with Jimmy Garoppolo. Hell, go back to the 90s when Steve Young lost the 92 NFC Championship game to the Dallas Cowboys, and the field was an absolute mess because of the rain over the weekend. We never gave Steve that rain excuse. We never gave Steve the rain excuse in the 97 NFC Championship game against the Green Bay Packers. I just don't like the excuses we start to make for our quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Brock Purdy had a bad game. Guess what? Football's played in snow, rain, freezing temperatures, hot weather. It's been played like that for over 100 years. Guess what, folks? Sometimes you have to win a game in the elements, and you got to step up and play the elements. We just watched Mahomes, an all-time quarterback, play in cold weather in back-to-back weeks. It didn't miss a beat.
Wouldn't you say, and again, as I put in some of the great quarterbacks into this conversation, because I think this is an interesting argument. The separator between Tom Brady and Peyton Manning is Peyton Manning, my interpretation, couldn't play well in inclement weather.
He struggled in inclement weather.
Okay, I'm looking at it right now. He was 8-12 in outdoor games when the temperature was below 40 degrees.
There you go.
Just that simple.
There you go.
Okay? But like in my mind, part of why, and Peyton Manning was, to me, the superior regular season quarterback.
Right.
Tom Brady was the superior postseason quarterback, right?
Yep.
Like, that's the separator between the two of them. But when I think of Peyton Manning, part of why he fell short in the playoffs was I don't think I trusted him at all in an inclement weather game.
There you go.
Now, Brock Purdy is not Peyton Manning, but I think there's a similar correlation right now. It's a couple of games. I mean, the sample size feels so small, I almost feel like I'm overdoing it by even mentioning it, but it's the Cleveland game. It's this game. Now, it rained a little up in Seattle multiple times, and he looked pretty good.
Right.
No, he looked pretty good. But for some reason, he did not look good in this game. It did look like he couldn't grip the ball.
Well, let's be real. The Cleveland game, they punked the Niners.
No doubt.
That, to me, was more of a physicality issue.
I would agree.
And the Cleveland Browns dominated the line of scrimmage. They flushed Purdy out of the pocket. Their team speed on defense flashed. You didn't have Debo. Trent Williams was compromised, and they beat you up. To me, they didn't lose that game because of the rain. They lost that game because of a lack of execution. And again, clock management late in that football game where you throw the ball 3 straight times when it's 3 minutes and 16 seconds left or 3 minutes and 21 seconds left and you burn 16 seconds off the clock. You can't do that if you're Kyle Shanahan. That's what that game was about. But all this thing about the rain and the elements and he can't. Well, guess what? One day you're going to have to play in Chicago.
Yes.
One day you're going to have to play in Green Bay. One day you may have to go to Pittsburgh again. One day you're going to have to go to Baltimore for a regular season game. Did we give Jimmy Garoppolo an excuse for the Baltimore Ravens game in 2019 when the rain was coming down? No. Instead, what I heard was it was tough to tackle Lamar Jackson because he was wearing an all-black uniform, so it was tough to see the football. Now, Jimmy Garoppolo played that game. I remember I was on with BSG. That was Steiny Guru Bonte. We never brought up the rain in that football game.
Well, no, we don't. But you and I have had this conversation, and I've told you if I was an NFC North and an AFC North team, part of my draft philosophy on quarterback is can you spin it in the cold and the rain and the wet and the sleet? Like I'm drafting bigger, stronger arm people because of that. Like I understand the elements are going to factor. Why do you think I short Tua in that division? Because I know Tua has to go to Buffalo and has to go to New England and has to go to the New York Jets where it's going to be cold and sweet and wet. And I don't trust them.
Well, that's why Buffalo drafted Josh Allen. That's why for years Buffalo tried to draft strong arm quarterbacks, J.P. Losman, Trent Edwards, E.J. Man. They tried to get strong arm quarterbacks, Rob Johnson, who they gave all that money to back in the day from the Jacksonville Jaguars, a 5-year, $25 million contract, because they need strong arm quarterbacks in Buffalo because of all the wins and all the swirls in the wind. That's why I was seeing some things yesterday on social media and said, boy, if you put Brock Purdy on the Buffalo Bills, they win that game. if you put Brock Purdy on the Buffalo Bills, they're not throwing more than 15 times. And it is what it is. And that's just due to their arm strength and Josh Allen. He could do things that Brock Purdy can't do.
For sure. You tailor the game plan to fit someone's skill set.
Exactly.
Like Lamar's game plan is different than how Brock Purdy is going to be game plan.
Yeah, you're not going to run that offense in Baltimore with Brock Purdy. You're going to run a completely different system. And that's fine. But I don't want to hear... I don't want to hear this excuse over and over. Well, it was raining. It was raining. We sound so soft. Like we fit the bill for the wine and cheese fan base if we're using the rain and the elements as an excuse for why he struggled. You know why Brock Purdy struggled? Because he wasn't seeing it. All right? He wasn't seeing the field well. All right? Why was he struggling? Because Green Bay's strategy and their scheme defensively was very good. They knew what Shanahan wanted to do. We're going to just junk the middle of the field. We're going to congest the middle of the field and make them throw outside the numbers. And you know what the 49ers did? They didn't throw outside the numbers until late in the game, right? Juwan Jennings in the flat, Brandon Ayuk in the flat, Chris Conley on the out route for 17 yards. They were daring the 49ers to throw outside the numbers. But one thing I don't want to do, and I don't want to hear ever again, is us blaming the elements for why he struggled when football is played in all types of weather. You can't make that excuse. We didn't make that excuse for Jimmy.
No.
We didn't make it for Trey. We didn't make it for Steve Young. We never made it for Garcia. Why are we making it for Brock Purdy?
No, I don't think it's an excuse, but I do think that there's, like, to me, I dismissed it. Now I'm saying, like, maybe it's just a thing where he performs worse in that weather. Like, not an excuse. I'm just saying, literally, he performs like do you trust Tua in 20-degree weather in Kansas City?
I barely trust Tua in 70-degree weather. You know what I'm saying?
So maybe he's not a great. Maybe he's not.
No, but I hear what you're saying.
You get what I'm saying?
Right?
It's not an excuse. I'm just more like baking in the equation moving forward, and that's why. To me, what we're saying here goes back to Shanahan for me, and why I was so frustrated. Then run the ball.
Right.
Understand part of being a great coach is pivoting off something that you know, like you planned all week. All right, well, Debo goes out. It's raining. My quarterback looks a little rattled. Maybe I should pivot off that game plan. Right. Maybe I should adjust and evolve on the fly. Right. Run the ball.
Right.
You have one of the best running backs of all time.
Right.
Run the ball.
So if Brock doesn't do well in the rain, which is crazy to me because if we go back to his college career, he played at Iowa State. All right? Ames, Iowa doesn't have great weather in the month of November and December. You ever go to the Midwest? You ever see the Midwest? They had a Kansas State game. Ironically, Iowa State was playing Kansas State this past season in Manhattan, Kansas, and it was nothing but snow on the field. Yet it was like 45-35.
Well, I wouldn't know. I've never played in like football in snow.
Right.
Is rain more difficult to play in than snow, or is snow more difficult to play in than rain?
Let's ask Baldy at 7:30 that. Let's ask Baldy because I don't know either. I never played in snow. I played in rain. It's not the fun. It's not the funnest. You don't have any traction.
Slip.
Yeah, it's tough to pass the ball in the rain, which is crazy why Shanahan wasn't running the ball more. So, look, it's not all on Brock Purdy and why the team struggled. Shanahan got tight.
Yeah.
Shanahan got tight. And this is something that I've been harping off for many, many years. And it reared its ugly head. I was texting with a high school friend of mine, Craig Patrick, yesterday.
Okay.
Patrick, he actually texted me during the show yesterday. I didn't get back to him.
Did he say that I was cooking?
No, he did not mention you at all. But he goes, you know, Shanahan might be a brilliant offensive mind.
Yeah.
But he's a terrible game manager. And I would take 15 other guys over him all day.
I don't know about 15.
No, I don't know about 15 either. However, he also added, meant to text you during the game, but Shanahan, I don't like the guy. It was such a close game, it didn't have to be. The Packers showed up to play. Although our guys are slipping on the turf, resulted in 2 touchdowns. But it was just our guys slipping on the turf. Why is it just our guys slipping on the turf? But Shanahan's clock management at the end of the first half. And we could go back. Hell, I brought up the 2019 Baltimore Ravens game in the rain. Go look at Shanahan's clock management at the end of the first half of that football game. For some reason, there's a point in the game where Shanahan gets really tight and he gets in his own dome. And this week against Dan Campbell and that Detroit Lions team, he's going to deal it all fly. Shanahan, throw everything on the table. I need you to be aggressive. I need you to say to hell with the clock management, be better in that department, run the football, use your assets, because as Brock Purdy played poorly in the first 3 quarters, it very well could be a byproduct of his old head coach being tight.
I'd be willing to listen to that. It's never one thing. Like, it's never like one guy's playing terrible. Sometimes the left guard isn't playing good, and he's getting dominated, which throws the rhythm and the timing off. The wide receiver gets chipped. Like, there's many, many reasons why there's an incomplete pass, right? It's never just one thing. But of the 7 playoff wins, they've lost, I think, 4 times in the playoffs with Shanahan.
3
times. There you go. Okay. How many of those games did we have clock management issues, you think?
Every last one of those games. Every last one of those games.
The Green Bay game up in Lambeau, I thought was pretty.
Well, you said the 3 losses.
Oh, okay. I'm actually in general the 10 of the 10 playoff. They played like about 10 playoff games with Shanahan. What do you think? A couple of them?
Super Bowl 54.
Because I'm trying to be fair here. I'm trying
Super Bowl 54,
paint the full picture.
Super Bowl 54. Dallas Cowboys game, clock management was atrocious.
It was all over
quarter.
the place.
It was all over the place.
I thought the Seattle game, they were really good.
All right. Seattle, sure, but you gave up a field goal at the end of the first half.
True.
The Dallas Cowboys game.
I thought ball management by Jimmy was the biggest issue in that game, but
I'm
that's fine.
talking about the wild card game. Clock management and ball management in 2021.
Yeah.
That's the Dallas Cowboys game, 2021 at Dallas. Against Dallas at home, there are some hairy moments with Shanahan's game planning or whatnot. So Shanahan has had flaws in more than half his playoff games. And if you want to just isolate his losses, the Rams game 2021 SoFi Stadium, I could write a book on Shanahan's game and clock management and how atrocious it was. And the play calling, how atrocious it was. And don't even get me started on Super Bowl 54. I don't want to go back down that road today, Shasky.
I know, but a common theme for me is at times we get too cute, and that's the frustrating thing. And, like, for example, you're bringing up the Super Bowl. Deebo Samuel and the Jet sweeps were killing it. Raheem Mostert was coming off one of the most prolific rushing games in playoff history.
He didn't carry the ball in the first quarter.
No, and you went away from Deebo. So, like, there are certain things that happen where I feel like he's obsessed with his scheme and it's going to work and it's going to work. The second Deebo comes out of that game the other day, like, I'm sorry, the Deebo playbook needs to be thrown out the window. Yeah. And you need to adjust on the fly. And you need to look at the personnel that you have. And you need to look at what the other team's doing and what you're doing well in-game. And you need to evolve your thinking mid-game. Yeah. I think that's my biggest frustration is that I think they're slow to pivot off of what the week's game plan was. Yeah. And that really drives me nuts.
So that's a Shanahan problem. And it's reared its ugly head again in these playoffs. And he's got a game to correct it. He can correct it over the next 2 and win himself a Super Bowl. But you got to be better, Shanahan, in these moments, man. Defending the first half and watching it back yesterday, I'm thinking to myself, this is gross.
Oh, the whole
sequence
was...
This is disgusting
The
football.
spike by Purdy, when you had the timeout and then you don't end up burning it, you wasted one at 1 minute, you let it sink down to 30 seconds and then wasted another. So, it was just very odd.
So, as Purdy struggled, maybe it's a byproduct of Shanahan's struggle.
Well, I think...
Maybe it's a direct correlation.
I personally believe that there's something there with he just doesn't play well in the rain for whatever reason.
Well, I'm not buying that, though. I'm not buying that.
We've got some evidence now.
No. Well, so what? Then you know what? Go get me a new quarterback. Well, you know what I'm saying? You're telling me a guy can't play in the rain?
Well, Peyton Manning, I just gave you a Peyton Manning as an example.
We crushed Jimmy Garoppolo for that Colts game in the rain.
Yes,
we crushed Jimmy for the rain game in Baltimore. We crushed Trey Lance for the rain game in Chicago to start the season in 2021 or in 2022. We've crushed quarterbacks in the past for not performing well in the rain. We never gave Steve Young, hey, maybe he just can't play in the rain. No, we said go out there and go win a game. We don't care what type of weather it is. And that's where I'm at with Brock Purdy. We need to be fair with all our quarterbacks. But we can't put one guy on a pedestal and say another guy can't do this. No, that's not fair, man. That's not fair to how we cover these quarterbacks in San Francisco. I'm not buying it.
But I think the differentiator for me is that in both rain games that we've seen with Purdy, Cleveland game and this one, he marched the team down in a position to win.
Yeah.
So, he did regroup enough to be able to perform when they needed him the most, which is really the ultimate test.
Right.
The reason Buffalo's at home, they didn't score any points on their final 3 possessions, period. That's why they're at home, right? And I look at Brock Purdy, and while they're still playing, is because he marched them down and punched in a touchdown.
Right.
And so, I do believe, the body of work for the 3 quarters, that was bad. But if you deliver in the big moments, it can override whatever you did prior.
And it did.
And I think that Jimmy, too many times than not, didn't deliver in those fourth quarters. I mean, his playoff fourth quarter numbers kind of speak for themselves.
No doubt. He came through in the clutch, which I was saying yesterday, survive and advance. And when we needed you, you picked it up. You picked it up in the fourth quarter, leading the 12-play, 69-yard drive, and you made all the right reads, you made all the right throws, and you get a lot of credit for that, for helping the Niners get back to the NFC title game. That is what it is. But I don't want to hear, Shasky, and I've been hearing way too much of it, well, he just can't play in the rain. What? We never – when did we start that discourse?